Who is Luke Martin? Today, we're going to learn about Mr. Martin, who went from actually providing heating and air for houses to actually providing whole houses to people now by doing real estate closings. Today, we get to learn about Luke Martin. Here on another episode of Suits and Boots. And here we are, we're suited and booted. We're going to let you know about who Luke Martin is and, of course, his boots. So welcome, everyone.
Well, I may wear the boots in the office, but I think you wear the pants in the office, right? So
something like that.
It's so unusual to be on this side of the microphone. I'm usually the one in charge.
Well,
here,
it is.
so.
And, sometimes I actually get a little nervous, doing the interview as opposed to being interviewed. But you have an interesting story, man. I mean, you went from actually doing heating and air to becoming an attorney. And so I think one of the first things I'd like to know, of course, tell us where are you from?
So I grew up here. I've always, believe it or not, I still live on the farm that I grew up on in Hidnight. So my family moved to this area probably maybe 300 years ago. I mean, it's been a long time. And so they had a farm there in Alexander County in Hidnight. And my dad inherited that, and then so him and mom still live there.
Okay.
And my wife and I just built a house there, so we live on the same farm. The only time I've left this area is when I went to law school up in Virginia. So,
well, tell me this now. So your mom and dad, of course, are still living.
Yep.
Now, do you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I had a brother. So Ben, my brother, a lot of people know Ben. He was a West Iredell High School graduate and went to Scotts Elementary, but came all through school. And when Ben was 5 years old, he was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy. And so growing up with him was really formative for me because I watched my parents really sacrifice and serve him because of the needs that he had. So if any West Iredell alumni out there, especially from the late 90s, early 2000s, you're going to know Ben Martin. And for so long, my mom was known as Ben's mom. I was known as Ben's brother. And unfortunately, he passed away in 2017. But, he when he was diagnosed, they weren't sure he would live past high school, and he lived to be 37 years old. So we were really blessed to have him as long as we did.
Well, let me ask you this. Now, you say you grew up on a farm.
Yep.
Okay. How in the world did you get into heating and air?
So my dad was in the Navy in the late 70s. He joined the Navy right out of high school. And when he came back, I think he had a few jobs, but ultimately ended up at JP's Plumbing and Heating, working with David Deal over there. And so he worked with them for a little while and then started his own company. And so as I was growing up, my earliest years, my dad was self-employed. He was a heating and air plumbing guy. And so when I was, 8, 9, 10 years old, I started riding with Dad. And we would go out to these jobs, and the tightest crawl spaces, that was my home. So if there was a place nobody else could get, I was a lot smaller than I am now. But I could get into those places, and Dad would... one of the things that I really enjoyed was the control wiring. And Dad would take the schematics for the air handlers or the heating and air systems and write down little notes for me and send me under the house to wire these units. I started doing that probably 10, 11, 12 years old. I was doing that. And so I did that up until 2009 when I was, 25 is when I went to college. So when I graduated from high school, I didn't care about school. I wanted to be done with it. In high school, I took the easiest courses I could take just to get done, hated school, had no interest, and couldn't imagine going to law school of all things.
Well, here's the deal. Normally, when you grow up in a family business, you're groomed to actually take over the business. Yeah. So, and what high school did you graduate from?
So West Iredell.
You went to West Iredell
High School. Yeah, I grew up in Alexander County, but we were right on the county line. And with my brother's muscular dystrophy, it was easier for my parents to work with Iredell County schools because they both worked in Statesville.
I understand.
So I went to West Iredell.
Well, what was the switch that came on that said, I don't want to do the family business. I want to go to college, and what were your parents' reactions? So
when I was, 25, I hadn't been married very long. Jessica and I got married in 2007. 2008-ish, I had gotten into, and even before that, I had gotten into sales for JP's. So Dad had joined back up with JP's and was a partner there. And so I started doing their retail sales stuff. And I would go out to people's houses and do design work. I would do load calculations on the homes and talk to them about, here's the heating and air system I think would work best for your house. And so I really got to talking to people and really got into the business side of it.
Okay.
And I really, really enjoyed it. So the business administration stuff, the sales stuff, the making the numbers work. and helping people all at the same time. I really enjoyed all that.
Okay.
And so I told my dad, I said, I think I want to own my own business. And, Dad was like, yeah, well, that's kind of where we're heading. And I said, yeah, but I think I want to do it on my own. And so at that time,
did you get any backlash?
No,
Really?
not at all, not
Okay.
at all. So at that time, I was really considering, Liberty came along because they had an aviation program, and so I wanted to be. I'd gotten my pilot's license in high school, and I wanted to continue with that. So I found out that Liberty would offer me a really good scholarship. So I'm like, well, maybe I should do that. But then I found out that the scholarship didn't cover the flight training, and that was going to be a lot more money. So I switched my major to philosophy and religion.
Well, did they at least cover a flight for you to get there?
No, you're all on your own.
Okay.
But I was really blessed. We had
Okay.
great scholarships and didn't have to worry about how to pay for school or anything like that. So it was really good.
Now, were you married at the time that you actually went?
Yeah, Jessica and I married in 2007. We went to Liberty in 2009.
Wow, man, and that has to be tough, not being the traditional. Sometimes it's when you're in law school, you don't meet your traditional student that comes right out of undergrad that goes into law school. But I can't recall a non-traditional student that was with me in undergrad, where they had worked for a few years and then went back. So when you went to Liberty, what was your experience there?
Well, so it was kind of odd because I knew working at JP's, I'm like, this isn't where I'm supposed to be. And I don't know, some people I know don't have faith, but one of the things that really drove me was my faith. And so I started praying about, well, God, where do you want me to be? And I knew I wasn't supposed to be where I was.
Okay.
And so one of the things I thought in my mind was, well, the Bible says, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all this other stuff you're worried about will be taken care of. And so I just thought, well, I just need to get as close to God as possible, and he'll show me what to do. And so when I went to Liberty, I remember walking across campus and thinking, this next step doesn't belong to me, it's the Lord's.
Right.
And so I just trusted him to guide me into what he wanted me to do. And I never imagined that would be law school.
So even at that point, when you were at Liberty and you graduated,
Yeah.
law school still was not on your mind.
So before graduation, what happened? And I was an undergrad. This was maybe probably my freshman year in undergrad, and I saw this ad pop up on our schools on Liberty's. We called it the splash page, but it was just a page for announcements, and it said undergrad moot court tryouts. I thought, what is that? So I clicked on it, and it had a little description on it. I thought, that sounds interesting. I might try that.
Okay.
And so I went to, believe this or not, I went to YouTube, and I just figured out what is moot court, and I watched some moot court arguments, and I went and tried out for the team, and I got on the team.
Now that's where I know that I'm a little bit older, because when I was in school, there was no YouTube.
You were on your own.
I was on my own. So after you got this information off YouTube and, basically planted the seed, what was your next course then?
So I started moot court. Grant Rost was my moot court coach, and he was one of the law school professors. And I learned as much or more from Grant about how to speak in public, about how to formulate thought and present that in an argument. And coupled with my philosophy undergrad, I was a major in philosophy. And I took a lot of logic classes.
Okay.
And so I learned about speaking and presenting an argument, and I just really loved it. And so that kind of, well, maybe this law school thing was something I should do. So by the time I got to my last year of undergrad, I decided law school was where I was heading.
Okay. And did you have, for example, any law school in mind, particular one, or was it just?
Yeah. So I really wanted William and Mary.
Okay.
That was kind of that would have been my dream, and just because of its history,
Right.
and the age that
Right.
it is. And at the time, I was really into American history.
Right.
And so I applied at William & Mary. I also applied here at Wake Forest because it was close to home. I could live at my parents and live at home and drive back to Wake Forest.
Right.
But and I got into both of those, but neither one were offering any kind of scholarship.
See, the flip side of that story for me is I wanted Yale.
Yeah.
But I didn't get an acceptance letter. At the end of the day, I had to sort of come back, rethink it, do some praying about it, and and learn where it would lead me.
I got accepted at both, and by the time we looked at it, we were going to have to move, and we owned a house in Lynchburg, and it was going to be like $100,000 just for law school, and I'm like, and then Liberty offers me a full ride.
Oh, you can't, you know.
I mean, yeah.
And I'll tell you, for the individuals out there listening that don't know about law school, when any law school offers you a full ride, tuition paid, you really have to give it some serious thought. And because that's how I ended up in Iowa.
Yeah.
You know, it was a fellowship. So that was the reason I ended up in Iowa. So tell me a little bit about the law school process.
I heard people talking about law school and like, oh, it's so difficult. It's so hard. And as a philosophy major, we would read maybe 300 to 500 pages a week as a philosophy major. We're reading these old writers who it's really difficult. And I thought, I got this. This isn't anything, man. You get into law school and you're reading 1,000 pages a week. 1,000 pages a week. And you think, there's no way.
Yeah.
It really is the hardest thing I've ever done as far as mentally to get that done.
And I got to tell you, and I cut you off, but I got to tell you, not only did you do it as a student, but you were married. You had and they always, and when I say they, individuals that went to law school and professors and lawyers had indicated that you should never get married while you're in law school. Law school is a jealous mistress. So I definitely have to commend you on the fact that not only were you dealing it in law school, but you were trying to maintain the family too. Now, were any of your children born during that process?
No, Abigail, our oldest, was born in 2016, and Lucian was born in 2018. So I graduated law school in 2015. So they can't. I was kind of thinking about maybe starting to have children in law school, and my wife's like, "Nah, we're not doing that." She's like, "I don't get enough of you as it is."
Well, I definitely commend you on that. So when you finally actually got into law school and you finished, was there any classes that piqued your interest that, before you graduated that said, I think I might want to do this?
So as at working at JP's, I'd gotten into the business stuff. So the business stuff was really intriguing to me. So the business associations, contracts, those classes. I never imagined real estate. So I didn't do anything with real estate in law school other than the one property class that we had to take.
Really?
So I didn't take any real estate classes. And then when I graduated, and Mr. Phillips passed away not long after I started working with David, he left a void in our real estate practice there at the office. And what I found, I started doing some of that real estate stuff, and what I found, because of my history here and the family here, I do these title searches and I see, oh, well, this person used to own that. I know them. Or, oh, I did a title search one time not too long ago, and the legal description said beginning at an iron pin in the northwest corner of L.S. Johnson. And L.S. Johnson was my great-grandfather.
Really?
And it's like, dude, that's cool. That's really cool.
Well, that's got to be cool.
Yeah.
That's really gotta be cool.
I really enjoy getting into the history of it and seeing how all this kind of fit together. And then I also enjoy the transactional side of it. So I do a lot of transactional work, as you know, with contracts and real estate and things like that. So.
Now, one thing that's similar, of course, with me and you and David is that we wanted to come back home.
Yep.
And so when you decided that you wanted to come back home, did you know that you were going to do real estate, or did you just do what,
No, I did like you when I first started, feline law, whatever the cat drags
whatever the cat drags in.
So I started out on all the court-appointed lists, did some minor felony stuff, and defense work. I didn't do minor felonies, just defended minor felony stuff.
If the state bar is listening, he's not committed any felonies. I'm just saying he, represented individuals.
It represented, Okay. So we did some of that. I did a little bit of family law, but not a whole lot. And then, like I say, when Mr. Phillips passed, he did a little bit of everything too. But he did one of those things was real estate, and so I took off with that and just said, man, I want to develop this. And so we started in 2016, really pushing the real estate development. And we have grown that practice quite a bit. So that's almost all I do now. Okay.
And so for those that don't know, prior to Luke or myself actually joining David Bimbo in practice, Mr. Bimbo operated Bimbo and Phillips. Yep. And so Mr. Phillips, of course, passed away, and that's when you came in and started doing the real estate. So once the real estate sort of started to take off, and you stopped practicing the feline law, is that when you realized that this is really what I want to do?
Yeah, it sure was. And so real estate, Isaiah and I were talking a little while ago, and we were talking about how you guys are in court.
Right.
And I said, I can't. The last time I was in court was probably a year ago, and that was the first time I'd been in court in years.
Yeah.
And I don't ever go to court because everything I do is based on a transaction. So somebody's got a contract, somebody's starting a business. And so I don't have to go to court.
Right,
and
right.
as I got into real estate, I really liked that aspect of
Yeah.
it. Everybody I deal with is happy. You know, they're either selling something or they're buying something.
Right. And you're right. And so that's what I was saying. You know, you went from providing heating and air now to providing people a vehicle to actually have a home.
Yeah, and I've talked about this before, I think, on the podcast, where we, you know, as a heating and air guy, you show up at somebody's house and the heat's off.
Right.
And they are happy to see you. And you can really help people.
Right.
Especially when it's hot or when it's
Right.
cold or, heaven forbid, the toilet stopped up, you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
My dad's always said, you know, plumbing and heating and air is recession proof because people are going to make sure the toilet works. It
Exactly.
don't matter how much money's in the bank account.
Exactly.
So, but being an attorney is so similar because you're dealing with things that are hard for people.
Right.
People are in a jam, or you know, even in your case, especially there might be in trouble or something like that. With what I do, they've got something they want to get done. They just don't know how to do it.
Right.
And I can come in and help with that. And that's really the most rewarding part of the job is being able to help people.
Well, I remember when you first started practicing, you know, I was, you know, of course, I had my own firm at the time. And one of the things that I always admired is that both of us would show up early. And I'm talking about before, you know, we had criminal district court, sometimes before anybody else or the attorneys would get there, you would be there. And I always admired that because that meant that you were serious about your business, just like I was. I wanted to make sure and not rush through things. I just wanted to be there, have enough adequate time to be able to do what I needed to do for my cases. So I always really admired that about you. In fact, I used to call you Cool Hand Luke. I did. I used to call you Cool Hand Luke. But I really admired that about you. Now, how did you come about to assemble your staff? Because you can't do the real estate on your own, of course.
No, not at all. So when I started out, Stacy Johnson was the real estate paralegal with David and I, and she was amazing.
Okay.
She took a job with the Register of Deeds here in town, and that left a really, I was panicking. Like,
Okay.
oh no, what are we going to do?
Right.
And fortunately, one of the other attorneys in town was ready to retire,
Right.
and he had a real estate paralegal, Miss Dana Fowler.
Yes.
And she came on board with us, and she has just been phenomenal. Really enjoyed working with Dana. She's such a sweet lady. If you've ever called their office and talked to her, you know they don't get any better.
And let me tell you about that. Now, let me tell you how things go full circle.
Yeah.
When I first wanted a job back here and wanted to come back home, I went to the attorney that you're speaking of, Mr. Maddox, and I had asked him for, a position. The first individual, the first smiling face that I saw when I walked in that office that made me feel welcome was Dana Fowler. And that was that was in 95. And so when I ended up, coming back to practice with the firm, I mean, she was a great help. Yeah. And we worked together up until the point that I went off. So, went off on my own. So it really has sort of, gone full circle. So now Dana and I are back together again.
She's awesome. Yeah. She's awesome. And then Tracy Dishman came to work with us a few years ago. She was at the tax office. She had previously worked for an attorney, Rusty Chapman, here in town. Rusty actually taught me a lot of, he sat down with me after Richard died and taught me a lot of the title searching and how to do that and the processes that you go through. And Rusty was just such a great help, and he's retired now. But Tracy had worked for him, and then went to work for the tax office, and then came to work for us. And we're really, really fortunate. We've got all kinds of other folks, Miss Bailey that's been with you for years.
Yeah.
Scott Copeland now that's on staff. So we've just got a great team that we've built around.
We do. And, even on my side of it, Ms. Gonzalez, Erica, we have Laura, we have my paralegal, of course, and she definitely helps me out on it. And I definitely appreciate Gina. I do.
My goodness.
Yeah,
She's
I do.
amazing.
I appreciate her. So now, you got your staff assembled and you're doing the real estate. What do you do to relax and break from all of that? Because at the end of the day, we still deal with clients. Yep. We still, have the pressures of running a law practice. What do you do to?
So I always tell people that, you might have a gym membership, but I've got a tractor payment. So I go home, and this time of year it's a little hard because it's getting dark so early and that kind of thing. But I've got a little farm. I'll get on my tractor and bush hog or go out and plant some food plots. I love to hunt. So
now tell me about this now, because you're the only individual that I know that goes way out in Wyoming somewhere in the middle of winter, and you hunt out there with no signal, no anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So
Because I get worried. I actually check our life insurance policies, whenever you go to
Yeah.
make sure,
Yeah,
just
well,
in case.
This last year we saw wolves and grizzly bears, and it was amazing. So back in 2018, I've always been a hunter. I've always enjoyed to deer hunt, and always enjoyed fishing. I don't do it as much, but always been a deer hunter and have always enjoyed that. I just love to get out and see creation, and just that is one of the most beautiful cathedrals that's ever been built, and it was built by the Creator. So I love to get out and just enjoy that. But back in 2018, a buddy of mine, who's a real estate agent that we work with as well, came and said, "Yeah, me and my dad are going to Colorado elk hunting." And I said, "Oh, I've always wanted to do that. I would love to do that." And he said, "Well, get in the truck." And I said, "Are you serious?" He said, "Yeah." I was like, "I don't know, man." Well, anyway, I did. So 2018 was my first year in Colorado, and we, despite what people think, attorneys don't make crazy amounts of money. We make a good living, but we didn't hire guides and things like that.
Right.
I bought a tent, I bought some decent clothes and a good sleeping bag and a backpack, and put all that in the truck, and went to Colorado, and we hiked in 5 miles or so, and pitched camp and started hunting.
And you mean to tell me, so you didn't stay in a cabin?
Mm-mm.
No.
No, and this is late October, so temperatures typically don't get below zero. It's usually in the probably the coldest I've seen has been in the single digits, but typically it's in the teens, and it'll get up in maybe 30, 40 during the day and get down in the teens at night. So, but we've got good gear, and we sleep good, and we don't sleep good, but we sleep warm.
I was about to say, because I don't know if I could sleep at all, knowing that there are bears and wolves and all this stuff.
Every year we've gone, and it's been so I've gone every year since 2018, and it's one of law school was by far the hardest mental thing I've ever done.
Right, and I can understand that.
Elk hunting is the hardest physical thing I've ever done. So because when we shoot one, we typically don't use horses. Or last year we did have horses, but we don't use horses. We don't use side by sides or four wheelers. The places where we're hunting, you can't take motorized vehicles into. They're called wilderness areas. And so what we do is we have to haul this thing out on our backs, and so we go ahead and butcher it in the field, and put the meat in our packs, and then walk it back to the truck. And that can be a few miles, or it can be, sometimes if we're fortunate, it's a few hundred yards. But most of the time, it's a few miles.
So let me ask you this. I mean, can't you just go to Food Line?
You can, absolutely. And most folks do, and that's okay. I really like to be a part of the process.
I understand.
So, and that's where, a lot of people will think about hunting and think, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you would go out and shoot an animal." Mm-hmm. But we all do the same thing. We just hire other people to do it. Unless you're a vegan or something like that. Everybody kills animals. It's just a matter of whether you actually put your hands on it or not. And I like to be a part of that process from the start to finish. And then you get the food out of it.
Right.
And the food you get is really the cool thing. Honestly, I could care less about the rack. I've never been a trophy hunter. I really enjoy harvesting our own food. It's not really any different than gardening. It's a little harder, but it's not. It's the same principle. You're getting your own food and providing, and it takes it really back to the basics of what life's about. You think about our ancestors 500 or 2,000, 3,000 years ago. It's what they did.
Yeah.
It's how they ate.
Well, and now, of course, Jessica, your wife.
Yep.
How does she feel about when you go out on these excursions? Does she ever get worried? Do your kids ever get worried?
Oh yeah. There's been so many times where we've said goodbye, and I've gotten in the truck to take off going out west and think, well, am I going to make it back? And the chances of something happening out there are so slim, but they're so much higher than they are here. It's just all in context.
I got you.
You don't hear of hunters getting hurt or dying, and everybody thinks about the bears and the wolves and mountain lions and things like that, but really it's the cold. So the number one killer of hunters out in the West is hypothermia.
I did not know that.
And the second is horses. So yeah, so it's like you think about bears and wolves and lions and tigers
Yeah.
and bears. Oh my, but no, that's not what gets you. It's the cold.
And so I understand, of course, Jessica worries about you, but she also assists at the office too.
Oh,
Can you
yeah, yeah.
tell us a little bit about what role she
So
plays?
I have been so blessed. Jessica is one of the smartest people I've ever met, and she worked for Liberty University, and that's one so that helped me with school. But she was able to start out on the bottom rung, and when she left, they had created a position just to give her promotions, and she was the coordinator of quality assurance when she left for resident admissions, and just literally one of the smartest people I know. And she comes in and just helps us with our accounting and stuff like that, which is part-time.
And our website too sometimes.
Yeah,
too.
And all these podcasts that you see posted,
yeah.
she's had her hands on them.
Yeah.
So yeah, she posts all that to YouTube and Facebook, and she built our website. She's our marketing genius in all this.
Well, let me ask you this. Now, when you first started practicing and first came out of law school and you first started doing real estate, tell our audience some of the changes that you've seen since you've been doing real estate, the changes in what, the climate is and just real estate in general, the differences.
I got to tell a story that my dad and I were talking about just the other day. So there's a fisherman that me and him watched named Hank Parker.
Okay.
And Hank's been fishing for years and years and years. And somebody had asked him about changes he had seen in the fishing industry and technological advances and things like that. And he used an attorney as an example. He said, well, let me tell you, he said, an attorney like David, or even maybe you to some degree, that started out 50 years ago, when he started out, he spent all of his free time reading law books, reading cases, trying to figure out what the law is, what are we going to do. He said he spent all of his career, and now he's got a really good body of knowledge. And now when a guy graduates from law school, all he's got to do is pick up his phone, and he knows just as much as that guy that studied for 50 years because it's all right there in your hand.
This is true.
It's changed so much, and it's changing so rapidly. So real estate, when I first started, was recovering from the 2007, 2008
I remember that
debacle.
I remember that very well.
And it was strong, and it continued to build up until 2020 when we had COVID first hit. And when COVID hit, everybody thought, okay, what's going to happen? And it was really unsure. Is the market going to crash? Is it going to? And man, it did the opposite. So it took off. For example, one of the towns close by where I hunt in Colorado is called Crested Butte. Crested Butte's more of a ski town. It's kind of like a smaller version of Aspen. And Crested Butte has had a housing crisis because of COVID. So what's happened is people realize they don't have to live in New York City anymore. And it's because remote work has kind of taken over the industry, some of these industries. And so now if you don't want to live in New York City, you can live in Crested Butte, Colorado, do the same job, get paid the same thing, and not have any interruption.
A lot of individuals doing that now.
So we're having all kinds of people come to these rural areas of North Carolina, like Iredell, North Iredell, and Alexander County, from places where we've never seen people come from before.
Right.
And they're moving in here, and the market is absolutely booming.
Yeah.
And it's still so. Throughout COVID, I mean, you guys know if you've watched the housing market, it just skyrocketed, and we were seeing people bidding. I mean, there'd be 14, 15 offers on a house that was just listed.
Well, I'm gonna tell you one of the craziest things I experienced or witnessed during that whole time that you're talking about, where it was just crisis and everybody's coming in and they need a house. Was there were a lot of cash offers.
Oh yeah.
During that time, and that was just something I had never heard of.
And the market was saturated with cash, and that's one of the things that drove inflation.
Right.
And then obviously the Fed raised interest rates to try to get inflation under control, which really cooled the market.
Right.
So you've got a lot of people sitting in houses where they've got a 1.9, 2.5, 2.75.
Yeah,
And,
I took advantage
at the
of it.
highest 3.5% interest rate.
Yes.
And they may be thinking, gosh, we'd really like to upgrade our house, but they can't sell because they are not going to get rid of that interest rate and go get a 6 or 7 or 8% interest rate.
How do you feel about the market now, though?
So, well, it's starting to change.
Okay.
So it never dipped.
Okay.
It never dipped. It leveled, and has been and sort of chilled out for, I'd say, the last half of last year. And earlier this year, it had gotten probably to its slowest point for us anyway. But now we're starting to see. So this past week, I did a closing for a 6%.
Okay.
Which is, and it was an ARM, but the ARM loans are actually not too bad because I always used to, and you always think about an adjustable rate mortgage,
Right.
like, oh, you don't want an adjustable rate, you want fixed rate. Well, maybe if you're looking at a fixed rate mortgage at 7.5, or you can get an adjustable rate for 6. If you go with the 6 and keep that for a few years, if rates drop, you can refinance. The other thing that a lot of people don't know is that rate may adjust in 5 years, but it's not going to go up more than 2%. Typically, it's 2% at a
Right.
time. So at the worst, 5 years from now, you'll have an 8% interest rate, which isn't that much higher than 7.5.
Right.
And then it won't change again for another 5 years.
Right.
So you get a 10-year loan at less than 8%. If I were looking at a mortgage right now, I would seriously consider an adjustable rate because of that. And we're seeing those at 6% But then, fixed rate, I just did a fixed rate just yesterday and it was 8.1. So
Really?
you got to, I don't think I would do that. I think I would look more toward the adjustable rate. Now, if you're doing commercial or something like that, which the one yesterday was more of a commercial type loan, that's a different story. So you're going to just have to take what you can get.
Well, let me ask you this too. Now, your father, of course, he's still doing the heating and air.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So Dad sold his partnership at JP's and kind of slowed down.
Right.
It's been a few years ago now. I can't remember exactly when it was, but he's still trucking right along though, and still doing just a little bit here and there for friends. And I think he's worked for you a little bit.
Yes, he has. He has. He's done some work, and I appreciate it. That I really do, and does great work. And I will tell you, it's got to be something to be able to, have this idea when you're, fixing heat and air under a house, and one day you tell your dad, I don't want to do this anymore. I really want a business, and on top of that, I want to go to law school.
Yeah.
But now it's come full circle, and it's actually worked out. Now, is there something about you that a lot of people wouldn't recognize or know that you would like to say, or anything that would be surprising the most? Because the most surprising thing to me for you was this thing of going out in the wilderness, man, when it's snowing.
That's
and
probably one of the most exotic or exciting things that I do. I am a pilot. I've been a pilot since 2002.
Exactly.
I got my pilot's license as a senior in high school.
Yeah. And
And that came about because my dad, actually. So I told my dad I wanted to go in the Navy and fly airplanes. Ever since I saw Top Gun as a little kid, I wanted to fly airplanes. And my dad said, well, son, if you want your pilot's license, you can do that right here. And I'm, really? And so I got my pilot's license in high school and started flying airplanes. When I graduated from high school, I had a buddy that was working in auto auctions. And he said, Luke, what you ought to do is go to auction school. I thought, auction school? What? So I tried it. I went to auction school, got my auctioneer's license, and worked for the auto auctions for a little while. But I came back to the heating and air. I mean, the auto auction thing was nice, but it wasn't a steady income. And I was never very good. So I went back to doing what I was good at, doing heating and air work and helping people.
Well, obviously, you're pretty good at being a pilot because you ain't crashed. I mean,
I'm still here. I'm still here.
So,
now, I don't fly that much either. So the odds are in my favor.
Well, look, I'll tell you what, it's definitely been a pleasure. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I enjoyed when we really started practicing, when we decided that we were going to, I felt like I was practicing with a friend, and I felt like I had practiced with you before because we used to run into each other.
Yep.
And
You used to say out here, I said, what you doing, Daryl? You said, catching some worms,
yeah,
because we were
some
always
worms.
early.
I was say, look, the early bird catches the
That's
worm.
right. That's
and
right.
might even catch his mom.
It
Might even run up on a family reunion if
Get
you're
there
early enough.
Get there early.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Anything else you'd like to say to our public that's listening?
I really appreciate it. It's been kind of odd being on this side. I'm not a spotlight guy, and my wife will tell you, I got in trouble this past year at the office because my birthday was coming up, and the ladies had it on the calendar, and they always try to do something special for your birthday, and so I saw it on our Outlook calendar for the whole law firm, and so I just went in there and deleted it. And then I got home that night. I made it through the whole day.
I didn't even know.
I made it through the whole day, and nobody said a word. And I thought, yep, I don't need the attention.
Well, isn't it funny? Because, when I was younger, man, I could not wait for my birthday. and Tanya will tell you this, I don't want any I'm good.
Yeah,
just let it come and go. And I don't know why it is, why I feel that way, but mine can come and go. And I'm cool with that.
Well, for me, I mean, where my office is, it's kind of tucked in the back corner. And if I sit in there all day and nobody, I don't get any attention, that's just fine with me.
I totally understand.
Tickled. But I told my wife that I deleted my birthday. And so she started texting some of the staff in the office, and they're like, Luke deleted his birthday. And they're like, oh, no, it's okay. We got it on our calendar. We won't miss it. And then Jessica said, it was today. And you could, oh. So now I think it's on like 500 calendars across the country, so nobody's going to forget it.
Well, look, if I missed your birthday, happy belated birthday, okay? Because I definitely did not know.
It's going to be the big 40 this year.
Yeah, well, you know what? They come to think of it, man. I don't think I have signed a card for you or, like we normally do for everybody else.
Trust me, I remember.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, it's been a pleasure, man.
Thanks,
I really, really enjoy practicing, of course, at Bimbo Davidson and Martin. And one of the things that, we always tell individuals, if you ever need any help, we're always here to help, and we're always glad to help. And that does it for another episode of Suits and Boots, or should I say Suited and Booted, with Mr. Luke Martin. And thank you so very much for your time.
Thanks, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe.